My uncle once looked me dead in the eye and said, "You've always been the black sheep of this family." While my aunt laughed cruelly and added, "Even her kid won't turn out right." But then, at a holiday dinner filled with roast turkey and forced smiles, my 9-year-old daughter stood up on a chair and declared, "Actually, I'm the one who got accepted into their prestigious school, not their kids." The entire room fell silent. The fake smiles vanished instantly. I never intended to cause a scene. Never have. I've spent years shrinking myself at family gatherings, saying the polite things, bringing desserts, laughing at jokes I didn't find funny, all because it's easier, because it's expected. My name's Nina Blake, 37, a single mom working full-time as a library assistant and part-time freelance editor. I live in a modest house on the edge of a small Pennsylvania town. Not glamorous, but peaceful. My family, on the other hand, prides themselves on being close-knit, respectable, and successful. And they'd tell you I've always been a little different. Their way of saying they don't understand me and never really tried. I'm the youngest of 3, the artsy, sensitive one. I married young, divorced younger, and had Lena when I was 28, which to them was the final proof I didn't belong. Uncle Raymond, my dad's older brother, is the loudest voice at every table, a car dealership owner who wears gold cufflinks to dinner and can't fathom why anyone would choose books over business. Aunt Celeste, my mom's sister, runs a wellness blog that's really just a platform for thinly veiled judgment wrapped in soft pastels. She constantly compares her perfect grandkids, Eva in gymnastics, little Miles playing cello, reminding everyone every 5 minutes. And then there's me and Lena. Lena is my world. Quiet, curious, thoughtful. The kind of child who notices when a classmate forgets their gloves and quietly offers hers. She fills spiral notebooks with stories and sketches, incredible fantasy creatures with glowing lanterns in their bellies. She loves learning, not for grades, but because it matters. But to my family, she's just the black sheep's kid, invisible, unworthy of attention. They never asked what she loves, what we've been working towards quietly for months. Real schools, dream schools, scholarships, essay contests, weekend programs. They never cared to ask. Thanksgiving was supposed to be another quiet affair. I brought my apple pie. Lena wore the soft yellow dress with daisies she chose herself. I told her to smile, be kind, and get through it, just like always. But this time, it was different. They were halfway through their first glass of wine when the usual subtle digs began, polite smirks about my choices, snide remarks about my parenting. Then Aunt Celeste, fork in hand and fake concern dripping from her voice, asked, "So, Nina, what's Lena up to these days? Still homeschooled, drawing her little cartoons? That's so sweet." I nodded, smiled, but my stomach twisted, reaching for water to change the subject. Then Uncle Raymond chuckled. "She's always been the black sheep, but hey, we can't all be winners. Let's hope the kid does better, huh?" I don't know what gave Lena the courage. Maybe she saw the way I swallowed my words. Maybe she'd had enough of being dismissed. Suddenly, she pushed back her chair, stood on it, and said the one thing that shattered the room and changed everything. "I've always known I didn't fit in with this family. It wasn't a sudden shock. It was a slow burn of cold, quiet moments, polite smiles that never reached the eyes, questions that weren't really questions. They never had to say, 'You don't belong.' I was the one who loved books more than sports, music more than math, the girl who painted poetry on her bedroom walls and got grounded for it, the girl who left college after her first year, not because I wasn't capable, but because I was scared and pregnant, and no one asked if I was okay. They only asked how I could be so stupid. After that, I stopped explaining myself. My parents moved to Florida years ago, leaving the holidays to Uncle Raymond and Aunt Celeste, who seem born to host and to judge. Every celebration is held at their sprawling home, with its perfectly manicured lawns, and 3 dining tables. One for kids, one for young adults, and one for the real adults. It's not subtle. I live 40 minutes away in a small brick rental with a cracked walkway and a garden overtaken by weeds. It's just me and Lena. We don't have much, but our home is warm, smelling of cinnamon and old books. She fills it with drawings, questions, and quiet joy. There's no pretending here. We're honest, even when it's messy. Lena will be 10 soon, and somehow, she already holds the wisdom of someone much older. She listens more than she speaks, observes everything, and asks the hard questions at bedtime like, why does Aunt Celeste always talk about her grandkids but never ask about me? I don't have a good answer for that. I homeschooled her, for a time. Partly because of the pandemic, partly because she thrived in it. During those years, we discovered she's gifted, not in the flashy TV show way, but in how she sees patterns, makes connections, and writes stories with emotional depth that stopped me in my tracks. One night last spring, she wrote about a little fox who was always last in line because her tail was too big. The fox tried cutting it off to fit in, but in the end, she realized her tail was what helped her find her way home in the dark. When I finished reading it, I cried, not just because of the story, but because I saw Lena writing about me and maybe a little about herself too. That was the moment I started seriously looking into schools. Real ones, special programs for kids who think differently, kids who don't get seen in typical classrooms. I found one that felt like a long shot, Wyndham Preparatory School, a prestigious private institution known for nurturing creative and analytical minds among high-potential students. The tuition was astronomical, far beyond our reach, but they offered scholarships to those who excelled on their rigorous evaluations and submitted an exceptional portfolio. Lena's test scores came back in the 98th percentile, and her writing portfolio moved the admissions director to tears. She even emailed me personally to say so. Then, just 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I received the acceptance email. We danced around the living room in disbelief and joy, but Lena asked if we could keep it a secret a little longer, not out of fear, but because she wanted to share it herself, on her own terms. I didn't argue. She deserved that moment. Out of polite obligation, I texted Uncle Raymond, hoping he might mention it at the family gathering. He didn't. Aunt Celeste said nothing either. So, when Thanksgiving arrived, I packed our pie, dressed Lena in her soft yellow daisy dress she'd chosen, and reminded her that no one's approval was needed for us to feel proud. The sky was heavy and gray, our breath visible in the chilly air as we drove. Lena clutched the acceptance letter on her lap, her fingers resting protectively over the school crest as if it were a treasure far more precious than gold. For once, we weren't shrinking back. We were arriving ready. Pulling into Uncle Raymond's sprawling driveway, the familiar tension clawed at my chest. The cars crowded the cul-de-sac, the same wreath on the door, the giant inflatable turkey, on the lawn, and that unmistakable weight in the air. Lena adjusted the yellow ribbon in her hair and looked at me, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. "Remember what I said?" I whispered gently. "You don't owe anyone anything today." She nodded, eyes shining. "I just want to eat pie and see Grandma's old cat." That cat had been gone for 3 years, but I didn't correct her. I was just as nervous. Inside, the house smelled like burnt butter and spice, the scent of something pretending not to be ruined. The family noise crashed over us. Laughter, too loud, hugs too tight, smiles that never reached the eyes. Uncle Raymond was in the kitchen, apron over his button-down, pretending he'd cooked every dish himself. He gave me a curt nod, no hug, no mention of Lena's acceptance. Aunt Marjorie ushered us to the dining room. Aunt Celeste arrived 10 minutes later, clutching a stack of early Christmas cards, passing them out like trophies. Her granddaughter, Ava, flashed a perfect smile, showing off her regional gymnastics medal, while Aunt Celeste's voice dripped with pride as she boasted about Ava's triumphs. "Honestly, we weren't surprised," I said with practiced politeness. Lena quietly reached for a dinner roll. Then Celeste mentioned Miles, her grandson, selected again for the district's cello ensemble, as if ticking off another achievement. "You must be so proud," I said steadily. "We are," she replied, eyes scanning until they landed on Lena. "And you, sweetheart? Still drawing your fantasy ponies?" Lena blinked. "They're wolves," she corrected softly. "But—" "They light up." Celeste laughed, a syrupy sound with a sharp edge. "Well, that's just adorable. Kids need their little outlets, even if it's just coloring and pretending." I felt Lena tense beside me and squeezed her leg gently under the table. Dinner rolled on. Talk of schools, Bradley, Uncle Raymond's grandson, being groomed for the Ivy League, Ava applying to a pre-academy gymnastics program, even little Miles testing above average in everything. "We just want to give them the best shot at success," Celeste said with a knowing look. "Some kids don't get that head start and it's hard to catch up later." I said nothing, tasting my sweet potatoes slowly, each word a sting to the back of my head. Then Uncle Raymond called down the table. "How's that freelance editing going? Still doing romance novels?" "Mostly academic now. Theses, dissertations, some children's books," I replied carefully. "Well, hey, as long as it pays the bills," he laughed, raising his glass. Comments like these had followed me for years, seemingly harmless, layered with judgment. I'd stopped engaging long ago, tired of arguing. But this time, I wasn't the only one paying attention. As dessert was passed, pumpkin pie, pecan tart, chocolate cake, Celeste leaned toward me, that same condescending smile in place. "So, what's Lena up to these days? Still homeschooling and drawing those little stories?" "She's back in school," I said cautiously. "And yes, still writing." "Well, it's good she has hobbies," she said. "Not every kid's cut out for the rigorous stuff. Bradley even had his first college prep workshop this fall. If you don't push your kids early, they fall behind fast." Lena hadn't touched her dessert. She stared at Celeste with narrowed eyes, not anger, but something deeper. Quiet clarity. "It's a shame," Uncle Raymond added. "Some kids you just know won't make it far, just like some parents." That was the moment Lena pushed back. Her chair, the scrape on the hardwood louder than any conversation. She stood, voice steady and clear. "I'm the one who got accepted to Wyndham Prep. Not Eva, not Bradley, me." The room fell utterly silent, forks frozen midair, glasses suspended, pie half raised. My 9-year-old daughter stood tall on her chair, chin up, hands at her sides, radiating calm and truth. "Actually," she repeated slowly, "I'm the one who got accepted to Wyndham Prep. Not Eva, not Bradley, me." Uncle Raymond blinked, stunned, and Aunt Celeste's mouth opened and closed like she was swallowing a bitter pill. Lena met their eyes without hesitation. No wobble, no smirk. Only unvarnished truth. "They picked me for the creative scholarship," she said softly. "I scored among the top on their evaluations, and my story was one of the best they've had in years." Reaching into her little yellow purse, a Christmas gift from my sister, she pulled out the folded acceptance letter she'd carried all along. The letter that changed everything. She held the letter out across the table like a fragile olive. Branched, but no one reached for it. That's when I found my voice, louder than I intended. "She's telling the truth," I said. Her heart poured into this. Wyndham only accepts 10 students nationwide for this program, and she earned her place. Still, no one stirred. "Is this some kind of joke?" Uncle Raymond finally snapped, his tone sharp, defensive. "Wyndham isn't a joke. It's for gifted kids, real top-tier achievers. And she is one," I said, locking eyes with him. "You just never noticed because you were too busy parading your grandkids' achievements." "Now, Nina." Aunt Celeste's voice was brittle silk, laced with disdain. "I'm sure she's smart. But Wyndham? That's a stretch, even for why." Suddenly, Lena cut her off, voice steady and clear. Because I draw. Because I'm quiet. Because I don't talk about myself all the time. No one had an answer. You never asked me anything, she continued, voice trembling. Not with fear, but something sharper, raw. You brag about Ava's medals, Bradley's scores, Miles's cello solos, but never once asked what I like or what I'm working on. In that moment, I realized Lena hadn't just been hearing them all these years. She had been watching, measuring, waiting. I wanted to tell her she didn't owe anyone explanations, that she didn't need to make them understand. But this wasn't my moment. It was hers. I didn't get into Wyndham because I'm anyone's niece or granddaughter, she said, voice firm, eyes blazing. I got in because I'm good at what I do, and I wanted to prove that, even if no one in this family believes I can do something big, I can still do it. Silence thickened, heavy and unyielding. Aunt Celeste finally looked away. Uncle Raymond lifted his wine glass and sipped slowly, saying nothing. And by the way, Lena added, softer now, my story wasn't about fantasy wolves. It was about being different, and how that's okay. She stepped down from the chair, sat back, and calmly picked up her fork. The moment cracked open the room, quietly but irreversibly, like the slow fracture of glass. Nobody knew what to say, and for once, I didn't care if they did. I glanced at Lena, sitting beside me, her shoulders just a little straighter. I reached over, squeezed her hand. You did good, I whispered. She smiled, small but fierce with pride. Something had shifted, not just in the room, but inside me. I'd spent years avoiding confrontations, thinking silence safer, that going along with their petty judgments was easier. But my daughter had done what I never could. She stood tall, not with anger, not cruelty, but with crystal-clear grace. That chair might have been small, but standing on it, she was 1,000 feet tall. The air felt different after she sat back down. Heavier, clearer. Aunt Celeste stared into her glass of Pinot, mouth tight, probably already spinning this to retell at Bridge Club. Uncle Raymond leaned back, exhaling through his nose like he was holding back a storm. His pride bruised, a look I'd seen before when someone dared to challenge him. Not used to being questioned. Definitely not by a 9-year-old. But Lena didn't flinch. She just went back to eating her pie. Wyndham, he said finally, dragging the word like it tasted bitter. That elite place by the lake. Private? Artsy, test scores through the roof, right? That's the one, I replied, tone steady. He laughed once, dry and short. Well, I mean, congratulations, I guess. That's unexpected. That word bounced in my chest. Unexpected. That's how they'd always seen us. Unqualified, lucky, out of place. It's not luck, I said, sharper than I meant. She earned this, worked for it. You all treat achievement like a birthright, as if being loud and ambitious makes you better. But sometimes the quiet ones do more with less. Sometimes they're the ones who surprise you. Across the table, Eva looked at Lena with wide eyes. No jealousy, just curiosity, like she was seeing her cousin for the first time. What's the story about? She asked, nudging her dessert aside. Lena glanced at me, then back to Eva. It's about a fox who thinks she has to change everything about herself to fit in, she said. But in the end, she learns that what makes her different is exactly what helps her save the others. A long pause followed. That's kind of cool, Eva said softly. A few chairs down, Aunt Marjorie cleared her throat. Well, maybe it's a good thing we've got a writer in the family. I always said creativity runs deep on your side, Nina. That was generous, considering she once told me to drop that dreamer nonsense and learn some Excel skills. I nodded. Maybe that was the closest thing to a compliment I'd get tonight. I looked at Celeste, waiting to see if she'd recover, regroup, reclaim control. She always did. But this time, she only took a long sip of wine and said nothing. It was almost disappointing. Not because I craved more conflict, but because I realized how much energy I'd wasted bracing myself all these years. I'd been so terrified of their judgment that I forgot how little power they truly held over me. You know, I said to the whole table, my voice steady. For years, I sat through dinners like this, feeling like I didn't belong. I stayed silent because I thought it was the only way to keep the peace. No one interrupted. Even the kids at the far end glanced up. But peace isn't silence, I pressed on. It's respect. And I refuse to endure meals where insults, to me or my daughter, are disguised as small talk. The words landed like stones, shifting the air. Aunt Celeste finally parted her lips. Nina, I didn't mean… I know, I cut in, not harshly, just honestly. But you don't have to mean to hurt someone for it to hurt. You just have to be willing to learn. There was no grand apology, no tearful embraces, just a room quietly reckoning with a version of me they hadn't anticipated, and with a little girl who was far more than just a sweet face and a soft voice. As dessert dwindled, conversations resumed, but softer, more genuine. Lena leaned her head against my shoulder while I finished my coffee. Was that okay? She whispered. That was perfect, I replied, because for the first time, I wasn't shrinking to fit the room. The room was shifting around us. The next morning, the house held a calm quiet, the kind earned after storms. Lena was curled on the couch, sketchbook in hand, drawing a creature with wings and antlers, fierce and gentle all at once. I watched her for a while before brewing coffee. Words felt unnecessary. We both knew something inside us had shifted, and the world around us had changed. After Thanksgiving dinner, there was no dramatic exit, no slammed doors or sobbing speeches, just a quiet scattering. People left in clusters, some offering awkward hugs, others avoiding eye contact. Aunt Marjorie muttered something about big personalities as she packed leftover turkey. Uncle Raymond vanished into the living room and didn't return to the table. Celeste didn't say goodbye, simply slipped out with her coat over her. Jaw clenched tight. It wasn't satisfying, but it was honest. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a single text from Celeste. Heard about Wyndham. Surprised, but good for her. Let's talk soon. I didn't reply, not out of anger, but peace, the kind that settles in when you stop chasing approval you never really needed. I know how stories like mine usually unfold. The black sheep redeems herself, wins everyone over, becomes the unexpected hero of the family reunion. But that's not real life. In real life, you don't always get applause. You get clarity. And if you're lucky, you get yourself back. I used to think being the black sheep meant I was broken, missing some filter, a polish, the instinct to fit in. But now I see it differently. Being the black sheep means you saw the cracks in the family facade before anyone else dared admit them. It means you said no, broke the pattern, walked away from the flock. And if you're really lucky, like I was, it means you raise someone who sees your worth when others don't. Lena didn't just stand up for herself that night. She stood up for me, for the version of me still holding her breath whenever someone joked with my name, for the younger me who believed smallness was safety, for every time I bit my tongue to survive another gathering. She didn't yell, or cry or lash out. She simply spoke the truth, and in doing so, she gave me permission to start speaking mine. In the days after Thanksgiving, I noticed the small shifts. My cousin Rachel asked if Lena could help her daughter with a writing project. Aunt Marjorie sent a thank you card with a note. Your daughter has a quiet strength. She gets it from you. Even Eva emailed Lena a photo of her latest medal, saying, I think your fox story was cooler than this. Not everyone changed. Not everyone reached out. But I stopped needing them to. The most powerful lesson I've learned is that validation doesn't require a chorus of approval. You don't need standing ovations to know you did right. Sometimes, all you need is to sit beside your child the morning after something hard, watching her draw creatures with glowing eyes, knowing you gave her the love and space to be brave. I don't know what the next holiday gathering will bring. Maybe we'll go, maybe we won't. Maybe they'll ask about Wyndham, or maybe they'll pretend it never happened. But I know this. I will never again sit in silence just to make others comfortable, and Lena won't either. We owe no one our quiet anymore. We owe each other truth, pride, joy, and the freedom to take up space in rooms that were never meant for us. I used to flinch when called the black sheep. Now I wear it like armor. Because black sheep aren't weak. They're brave enough to walk their own path. And sometimes they raise a girl who isn't afraid to stand on a chair and tell the truth when it matters most. So, if you've ever felt like the black sheep in your family, if you've ever stayed silent to keep the peace, or let someone else's version of you define your worth, I hope this story reminds you that standing up doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes it just has to be true. And if this spoke to you, made you feel seen or less alone, please like the video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me your story. I read every one. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Stories for the quiet warriors, the kind rebels, the black sheep who finally found their voice. Thanks for being here. Until next time.